We've had Ben on before. If some of you who are regulars at our library probably recognize him and probably think he's a good friend by now. But if you're new to Mr. Cohen, he is an author. He lives in Michigan, and it's probably backwards, but it's called The Complete Guide to Seed and Nut Oils, and by Bevin Cohen. And he's got, thank you. He's got 3 other books. Is this your 4th, Ben?
It is my 4th.
It's your 4th. You're getting to be really prolific. And Ben also works closely with Mother Earth News. You've been helping or working with them on some articles, and you've gone to the fairs and been a speaker, and he speaks all over the state and now all over the country. Have you gone out of the country yet, Ben?
Only to Canada.
So we're still letting people in while we're chatting, but I think we're going to get to it. So everyone, I'd like to introduce Bevin, or I accidentally call him Ben sometimes because that's how I met him. But Bevin Cohen, Michigan author, and all around gardener, herbalist, seed starting guy, seed saving guy. You know, he knows a lot about everything. So we get every chance we get him here to talk to us. So welcome, Ben.
Pam, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see all of you, or those of you that I can see, and the rest of you, if you're interested in turning on your cameras so I can see you, that'd be all right too. Sometimes it's more fun to see everybody in person than just to see all your names while I'm talking to the screen. So that way we can kind of pretend we're all sitting in a really big living room or something together, spending some time together. Hi, everybody. That's fantastic. Oh, it's so nice to see everyone. Very cool. Very cool. So Pam already introduced me. I'll just tell you a brief little bit about myself, I suppose. I'm Bevin Cohen, and I'm from Small House Farm in Sanford, Michigan. That's all I'm going to say about it. Let's get ready to the presentation. We got an hour, and I got so much to say. So let's share my screen, and we can get going. Today, we are going to talk about wildcrafted herbs and cold press oil. So it's kind of a combination presentation. These are 2 things that are really the cornerstone of a lot of what we do here at Small House Farm. We are on a dead-end dirt road across the street from 1,100 acres of forest. So we do a lot of foraging out there for herbs for our food, as well as for our medicine, for our teas and whatnot. And here at the farm, we also cold press seed and nut oils. Quite a vast array of them, as seasonal and local as possible as we can get them. Sometimes we have to source the seeds from other growers, or sometimes even from out of state, but we always try to work with the most local growers that we possibly can. To me, as with anything else, I think that the relationships that we can have with our growers is very important. If we're going to buy food, if we're going to buy seeds, anything, buy herbs, it's important to know who's growing them, how they're being grown, the conditions that they're in, the conditions of the workers, etc. So keeping things as local as possible anytime we do anything helps us to ensure that we're supporting the quality of life that we believe in for ourselves and for our communities, right? Now, my 9-to-5 job, I suppose, if I was to say that I had one, would be what you see on the screen here. We take the herbs that we grow on our farm or gather from the wild, and then all these oils that we press, and we combine them together to craft a full line of herbal wellness products. Now you can see here our sunflower oil and our hemp seed oil. We offer some of our oils just as is for culinary applications, and some of them are pretty popular. These are 2 probably the most popular ones. But like I said, we utilize them in all of our wellness products as well. Teas, tinctures, lotions, all sorts of stuff like that. So we're going to talk about both of those things today. We're going to talk about how to press your own oils and gathering your own herbs, and sort of the intersection where these 2 things meet. A lot of what we're going to be pulling from today are from these 2 books of mine. The one that Pam showed you is my newest book, The Complete Guide to Seed and Nut Oils. And it just came out, I don't know, last week or something. It's very, very new. It's a new little baby, and I'm so excited to share it with the whole world. It's pretty cool to be able to get this out there to share with folks. We've been cold pressing oil from seeds and nuts for just shy of 10 years now. So it was quite a learning experience. Lots of ups and downs, lots of challenges, most of which we were able to overcome. So to be able to put this book together to share with everybody, I hope will inspire others to try their hand at pressing their own seed and nut oils, and learning from all of my mistakes. Maybe they'll have an easier journey of it. This is a book that I wish that I would have found 10 years ago. It would have made my life a whole lot easier. That's for sure. And then the other book that we're going to talk about is the Artisan Herbalist, which came out last year, I believe. And it's all about making teas, tinctures, and oils at home. So the oils part is what we're going to talk about here. Specifically that the overlap between these books, utilizing cold pressed oils and wildcrafted herbs to craft a line of wellness products for yourself and for your family, and hopefully for your communities as well. I just like to share this because I like to show it off if we're talking about oils. In 2017, we won a Good Food Award in San Francisco for our hemp seed oil. Now, I'm going to tell you the story here in a little bit about how we got started pressing oil, and the difficulties that we faced when that happened, and how unsure we were as to where things were going to go. But winning this award was a game changer for everything that we did at Small House. We were the first hemp seed oil that they ever had in their competition. And it was a blind taste testing. So there were some chefs there and some food magazine guys. I'm not really sure who it was. Very important people, I'm sure. And we won this award. And being the first hemp seed that had ever been in the competition and then winning the award, we got a lot of press. We were in a lot of magazines all over the country. A lot of people were talking about it. And it really took this little thing that we were doing here at our little farm in Michigan and just launched it into the whole world. And there was, for a couple of years, it was pretty much out of control. We were shipping oil all over the world. It was quite a thing. And it's really because of that we are able to do all of the things that we do now at Small House. These cold press oils have become the foundation of everything that happens at our homestead. So again, hopefully I can get you guys kind of turned on to the idea and you can do it yourselves. I'm going to show you how easy it is. It's very simple to do. It's something everybody should be considering. We think about local food, and if you've ever heard any of my talks, I talk about local food a lot and the importance of knowing our farmers. I've already probably even said that once today, and knowing where our seeds come from and that sort of thing, and staple food crops and food security and all of these topics, and culinary oils is something that we use almost in every meal that we prepare, right? You think about it, if you're sauteing some veggies or if you're making a salad dressing or whatever it might be, oil is a regular ingredient in things that we do in the kitchen. Yet when we talk about localized food systems, when we talk about preppers, when we talk about do it yourself, when we're talking about being self-sustaining, all these sorts of things, we very rarely ever discuss oil, but it is the foundation of so many of our recipes. So to me, it seems to be a no-brainer that this is a very, very important conversation that we should be having. People have been cold pressing oil since the dawn of agriculture, right? They talk about oil extraction in the Bible. In the Bible, they talk mostly about olive oil, but it's really a very similar process. We'll even talk about that a little bit probably during this talk. This is an example of a very old-fashioned method for extracting seed and nut oils. But really not much different than how we do it today. And what we're looking at here is in the circular trough in the center, you can see that plant mass in there. That's the seed. That's mashed up seed inside of that trough. And then there's this large stone wheel. And the beast of burden here, this oxen, will go around in a circle, and as it goes, it wheels that wheel along, crushing those seeds, just using pressure to squeeze those seeds to get the oil out of them. That's all that's happening here. Now, unfortunately, we can't see all the way to the edge of this picture, but all the way to the right where it's kind of cut off, if you could look at that and you could see it, what you would see is almost like a little spout coming off the side of this stone. And this entire stone is at an angle, right? Angled towards that spout. So gravity causes the oil to flow towards that spout. It'll pour off of there and it's collected in a bucket, right? So this animal's going around squeezing the seed, squeezing the oil out of it. The oil's running off, being collected in a bucket. Now, this is not quite the method that we use at our farm just because the health department wouldn't let me have an oxen like this, I suppose. But the technology itself is identical, utilizing pressure to create fresh, cold pressed oils. Let's talk about what I mean when I say that, right? What do I mean when I say fresh, cold pressed oils? Well, fresh is obvious. We all know what that word means. The oils that you press yourselves are the freshest oils you're going to get. They're literally pressed that day. If you think about going to the grocery store to purchase oils, and this is going to be really generous to the grocery store, but if you go to the grocery store to purchase oil off the shelf, any kind of oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, whatever you're getting, it's at least and I'm being generous with this, it's at least 6 months old, sometimes older. If you are living in a small town where you don't have a lot of turnaround on the items on your shelf, where some things tend to sit there a little bit longer, those oils could be a year older or longer. Why does that matter? Oils are mostly fat, right? And they're going to go rancid. They're going to break down quickly. Some of them do, especially when just left at room temperature, right? But we can avoid all of this by pressing our own oils at home. The freshest possible oils. They're going to have the greatest flavors, the greatest aromas, and most certainly the best nutritional value. Oils that have been sitting around for 6 months to a year that have already started to break down, already started to become rancid, you're not going to get the flavor that you want. You're not going to get the nutritional value that you want. And that's important if you're using the oils for culinary applications, or if you're using topically, for herbal applications. You want the most nutritional content in that oil. That's going to give you the best products. That's going to give you the best flavor. And what do I mean by cold pressed? Oils that are extracted, mechanically extracted, utilizing pressure under 125 degrees Fahrenheit are considered cold pressed, right? Below 125 degrees, that's cold pressed. Hotter than that, well, that's not cold pressed, right? Now, why does this matter? Again, oils are fat, and that high heat tends to oxidize and break down the fat molecules, right? So these oils aren't going to store as long. They're not going to taste as good. They're not going to have that nutritional value. The best, most flavorful, most nutritional oils that you're going to get are fresh, cold press oils. And that's what you get when you cold press all of your own oils at home. I use the word expeller press. Perhaps let's talk about what this means. When we're talking about expeller press, these are mechanically extracted. These are oils that are extracted utilizing pressure, just like with the oxen in the wheel, just like that. And I'll show you my possibly even in the next slide. But we utilize a turn screw is what it is. It's the seeds fall into a chamber, a screw smashes those seeds to get the oil out. These are considered expeller pressed, right? These are cold pressed because they're below 125 degrees, and they're fresh because we're doing it right now, right? The opposite of an expeller pressed oil is a chemically extracted oil, solvent extraction. Most of the oils that you're going to buy at the grocery store, unless they say expeller pressed explicitly right on the package, are chemically extracted. And the chemical that they use as a solvent to extract oil is hexane. And hexane is like 2 molecules away from being gasoline. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's not something that I want on my food or on my body or on my family or anything like that. So we steer clear of these chemically extracted oils. But not only are these oils extracted with hexane, but then after this, they go through the process of refining. And refining oils are deodorized, they're bleached, they're degummed. They go through an incredible process that causes them to have very little flavor, very little nutritional value. But boy, they sure are shelf stable at this point. They'll sit on the grocery store shelf for a year or more, no problem until you come and buy them. But are you going to get something that you want? Not really. If you were to take an expeller pressed sunflower oil and set it next to a chemically extracted sunflower oil from the grocery store, you would immediately be able to identify the differences. An expeller pressed oil is golden, beautiful, dark yellow. The counterpart, chemically extracted, pale, weak yellow color, right? Expeller pressed sunflower oil smells like and tastes like sunflowers. Chemically extracted sunflower oil, very little smell, very little flavor, right? You definitely see that you're losing out on all of the benefits of the oil by buying these mass-produced, chemically extracted oils. Again, most of the oils that we get at the grocery store are chemically extracted. So it's very important that we look at the packaging. Not the front label, right? Because the front label is just marketing. It's the back label that we want to look at. We want to look for that word expeller pressed. That's very, very important. If it doesn't say it, it's not expeller pressed. Here's the press right there. This is the one that we got started with, and this is the one that all of you should start with. This machine is all you need for household use. Because think about how much oil you might use in a household. You do use it for every meal almost, but what are you using? A tablespoon or 2 at a time? So we're not using a lot of oil. So a small machine like this, you're able to press as much as you need for a week in very little time at all. Now, this is the machine that we started with, right? The Pitabuck. That's the brand. You can buy this exact brand. This is the best of the best. If you're going to buy a hand-cranked oil press, this brand is the best. They make them in Holland. It's essentially 3-4 parts. Maybe the next screen shows all the different parts next to each other. Very, very simple. You can buy them online. I think Amazon's got them. Johnny C. Catalog used to sell them. They're less than $200. It's a very fine investment. They're hand cranked, right? You load them. They don't even come with a hopper. This is a water bottle with the bottom cut off of it that we're using to put the seeds in. But it works, You put it on there. You load in the seeds. You crank that thing. That screw squeezes those seeds through there. and the oil collects into that jar. It's the exact same technology. The oil runs out that little slit to be collected, just like that stone wheel. It's the same kind of process. Now you can see here next to the jar of oil, that little light blue colored bottle. What this is a little kerosene lamp, actually, with a little small flame that's inside of that red metal ring that kind of heats up that chamber a little bit. Now, it's still below 125 degrees, so it's still considered cold press, but that little bit of heat in that chamber really coaxes out a lot more oil. You're going to get higher yields by warming up the machine before you run the seeds through it. I often recommend folks even warm up the seeds themselves. Seeds at room temperature are going to produce better than cold seeds if you're storing them in your refrigerator, but if you warm them up in your oven to above 100, 110 degrees, and then run them through your press, you're going to get even better yields out of it, right? That heat just kind of loosens things up, coaxes a little bit more oil out of the seeds while you work. Now you can see all the parts of the press right here. You can see the handles on the left. There's the pit of a body with the kerosene lamp still attached to it. You can see the turn screw laying right there. And you notice, like on the screw itself, how the gauge of the screw is more narrow at the base and it gets a little bit thicker and wider. That's called graduated. It's a graduated turn screw. And what this does is not only does it help push the seeds forward through the screw out to the end, but it also leaves space for that oil to have room to run back to come out to that slit to be collected down below. You can see it comes with a few different washers and things like that, and then some mounting bolts. And you can look on the body of the press and you can kind of see where there's holes in the press, right there by the name and at the bottom. And this is, you're going to have to mount this onto something yourself. Now, 10 years ago, when I first did this, I mounted this onto a small end table, and I thought that would work out really well for me. It became pretty cumbersome to move around. Once I started realizing how much pressure I was going to put on the machine, I realized that I was in no means a carpenter at all. And I really had to change what I was doing, because you're going to put a lot of pressure on this machine as you're crushing these seeds. So what I've done, and I think I got a picture of it coming up too, is I've actually taken the press and mounted it to a board. And then I take that board and then mount that with clamps onto a table. So it's easy to move around, but having these multiple surfaces of contact actually kind of spreads out the pressure that I'm putting on the machine, dissipates it a little bit, makes it a little bit easier on the screws. I'm not wrenching it around quite too much. Just above the screw here, you'll see these two little caps. And if we go back to that last slide, you can see the caps on the end of the chamber here. We'll go back to this. So the one on the left that's open, you'll always have that one on there, right? It creates it tightens, it reduces the size of the hole coming out of the machine, which helps create that pressure. But we need space for the seeds to come out the end, the crushed seed after we're done. But very, very small seeds, think about poppy seeds, flax seeds, and that sort of thing, they're just going to pour out the end of the machine. So then that little bolt will go over top of that hole, thus closing that up a little bit more, creating more pressure inside of the machine, but there's still enough space for the seed cake to come out. And I got some pictures of that coming up as well, so you can see that in action. But that helps create that pressure inside of that chamber, because again, that's all we're using is a little bit of heat and pressure to squeeze those seeds to get the oil out of them. Now, over the years, we upgraded to these machines, as you can see here. Now, I'll tell you the story. When we got started doing this, I'll tell you the whole story. I'm a bit of a storyteller, so you're gonna hear it. Well, more than 10 years ago, many, many moons ago, I used to work for State Farm Insurance. I did marketing for State Farm Insurance. That was my main job. And it was, although they paid me well, it was soul-sucking work. It was not meant for, it wasn't for me. And I found that was not my calling in life. So when I stepped away from that and we bought the farm and we came out here and we decided we were going to try to do something a little different with life. I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to do, but I knew I needed to do something different. So we bought the small house and we came out here. And I read in like an organic gardening magazine or something at that point about a couple who had quit their corporate jobs to start a new life. So I was like, oh, this resonated with me. So I was reading the article. And this couple had purchased an old mill, a windmill, that was used back in the day for grinding grains. So they bought this windmill, and then they started working with local farmers and convincing them to grow organic grains. And then they were bringing the grains to the mill, and they were milling these into flour, and they created a whole business off of this. And they were very successful, very happy people. And I thought, oh, okay, that's what we're going to do. That's what I want to do. I want to mill some grains. That sounded really fun to me. But on my hunt for a grain mill, there wasn't any windmills for sale by me. I found an oil press. this old oil press. And I thought, what an interesting thing this is. You know, I don't know of anybody doing this. I looked around on the internet, I could find barely any information about it at all. So I thought, well, this might be the thing. This is either a really good idea or it's a really bad idea. And that's why I'm not finding anybody else doing it. But we're jumping into it with both feet. Let's do this thing. My wife is the most patient woman on the entire planet because she has to deal with me all the time with these types of ideas. So she said, all right, if you want to buy this press, let's do this thing. So I bought the press, and I had a friend that grew some sunflowers down the way. So I got a bag of sunflower seeds from him, and we pressed up some sunflower oil, right? And then down in Midland, in downtown Midland, there used to be a lady that had an olive oil store, you know, where you can go in and sample olive oil or what have you, showing these little stores, which, by the way, side note, those folks are just buying oil in bulk and rebottling it. They're not pressing that oil, but that's the side story. She was my only point of reference for what a quality oil would be. So I took my sunflower oil into Peggy and I said, Peggy, look what I made. And Peggy said, this stuff is fantastic. There's probably a market for this. You could probably sell it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I got a hold of another friend of mine who's an artist. And I said, I need a picture of a sunflower. Now let's go way back to the beginning of my presentation. See this bottle of sunflower oil? See that flower right there? That's what she drew. She had those 3 markers on her table. So she drew the sunflower right there on the spot. And she said, here you go. So we made this package. It's the same label that we use to this day right there. My wife whipped this together. We put it on the bottles. We went down to the farmer's market. I set up my little table. I had like 8 bottles of oil or something, you know, set up my table. I was very proud of what I had going on here. I sold out in 20 minutes. Clean me out. Like, people were right on it, you know, because people that come to the farmer's market, they want to support local stuff. They'd never seen anything like that before. So they're like, well, let's support it, you know, and that's all the encouragement I needed. I said, we're going to keep going. Let's press more. Let's press more. And, you know, and things kept building up. And then we won that award. And that's when I realized my physical limitations. I couldn't keep up pressing this oil by hand by any means, you know. I could only do it with my right arm. I could never figure out the rhythm with my left arm. So I had, like, I had a Popeye and a Wimpy. You know, I had one really strong arm and one weak arm. And it was going to be the death of me, I swear, trying to keep up with this demand. So we eventually upgraded to these machines. The technology is exactly the same. It's got the turn screw, the hopper, it collects it in the bucket. It's exactly the same. The back of the machine is the largest part of the box. That's just a motor. It's just a motorized thing. It's electric. You flip the switch and you go. This was a lifesaver for me. It really changed everything. Some of the issues that I had with it was, one, you cannot find these things that are made in America. In the United States, if we make an oil press machine, it is tremendous. And it's for like biodiesel fuel. They're huge machines, fill up my whole garage. So a tabletop model I got from Alibaba. It's like the Chinese version of Amazon is where you buy these things from. So all the directions were in Chinese. Nothing was in English at all. What I quickly discovered was the cheaper model, the less expensive one, which is the one on the right, I believe. The motor is so weak that I can't even press hard seeds with it. I could do soft seeds like sunflower seeds and that sort of thing, but it couldn't even crush flax seeds. And by less expensive model, I'm talking like $800 or something I spent on that thing, and I can barely use it for not everything that I would want. So we had to buy a much more expensive one. So that was basically because I can't read Chinese. I bought something I couldn't even use. So that was the downside to that. But they really were a game changer for us. We were able to press our oils at a much more efficient rate without the physical wear and tear that came with it. But for at home, for you guys, you're not going to need to press as much oil as I was. You're only pressing what you need for household use, so you don't need to worry about it. But I got some tips and tricks just in case you change your mind later down the line. You see this picture here. This is actually in a commercial kitchen facility. After we won the award and we had this big explosion in business, we moved into a commercial facility. It was licensed and inspected and this sorts of thing because we were selling oils to grocery stores and co-ops. We're selling them all over the place. So obviously we had to be federally licensed. And that was a whole adventure in and of itself. But then I'd gotten to a point where I'd realized that I was waking up every morning and driving to town to work in a kitchen all day and then sitting at a desk and doing paperwork all night. And I'd kind of lost track of where I was trying to go when I bought the small house and to move away from my crazy corporate life. And it's human nature to try to make the biggest and best thing out of your situation, but I was out of control with it. So since then we've scaled down. I still use these machines at home sometimes, but we're no longer in a commercial facility. We don't sell our oils at grocery stores anymore. We've really moved it back to a more small scale relationship based business, but that's again a story for another day. At one point, I decided to do this, which is something that you guys could certainly do. I've taken the hand turn press, as you can see on the right, and I put a pulley on it, and I've rigged it up to my own motor, which would have been a lot smarter for me to have done than to buy this motor from Alibaba. But at the time, I didn't know. So you learn as you go. So you guys can skip all my mistakes. I just repurposed this old motor, hooked it up. Fantastic situation. Now, here's the first iteration of this. I've got it mounted to this board, as you can see, and then the board goes onto the table. And this is helping to alleviate some of that pressure. When I use this thing for real, as opposed to just posing it for this picture, where the oil drips out, I actually take a small funnel, and with a couple rubber bands, I hook it onto the press, and then I use some aquarium tube off of that funnel down to the ground where I can collect the oil into a bucket. That way I can run this machine continuously. I don't have to keep cleaning out the oil if, what is that, like a half pint or something. I just let it keep running into the bucket. I could press a lot of oil. All you got to worry about at that point is filling the hopper. So that was a nice, easy way to go about it. Oops. Then we moved it onto this, which I thought was really smart. So now we've taken the pulley off and we've put a sprocket on there from the bike store. If you have a bike supply store, this is like the most basic size sprocket that they have. Was exactly the size that fits right onto the press. It was perfect. It's got a little screw so you can tighten it on there. You put it on the screw, tighten that thing, boom, hook it up to your bicycle. Now the challenges here for me became turning my bicycle into a stationary model. So we had to get that back wheel up off the ground, right? So the first version of that, I built something out of 2x4s that seemed to do the job. But as we all know, I'm not really a carpenter, so that didn't work the best. You can buy a rack right off of like Amazon for 20 bucks that turns your bike into a stationary bike. That's all that you would need just to get that wheel up off the ground so it can spin freely. Since then, I've purchased an old exercise bicycle from the 60s, very basic machine. These newer exercise models, some of them don't have pulleys, some of them don't have gears. It's much different, but these old models from the 60s are really basic technology. So we've just rigged one of those up. I've taken 2 bike chains now. I bought the little tool so you can pop the pin out, and I've connected 2 bike chains into one very long bike chain that then runs all the way up to a tabletop where the press is at. So you can ride the bike, the oil's pressing on the table behind you. Really, really easy way to go. You put one of the kids on this thing, you dangle a carrot in front of them, and they just go, you know what I'm saying? And you can press a lot of oil in a really short amount of time. And again, you don't need a lot of oil. And this is a point that I'm going to say probably a few times because I think this is important. You only want to press enough oil for the week or maybe for the month. You don't need to press a whole bunch of oil and store it for long term. It's easier to store the seeds for long term and to keep them fresh than it is to store the oil in large quantities and keep it from going rancid, right? And the beauty of pressing your own oil is you have the freshest, most delicious oil available. So just press what you need. Press it in small batches. Enjoy it seasonally throughout the year. It's not a lot of time. It's not a lot of work. And you get the benefits of delicious and varieties of delicious, fresh pressed oil, all sorts of different wonderful stuff. Let's talk about some of those varieties. Now, this is a list of probably the ones that we press the most often here. The 3 highlighted ones in red are the one I'm going to focus the most on because these are the ones that I like to encourage folks that are new to pressing oil, maybe to start with these guys. These are all cultivated annual crops. I've got some nuts and some foraging that we'll talk about towards the end of the oil part of the presentation, but these are the 3 I'm going to focus on the most. First off, sunflower, because sunflowers can grow practically anywhere. You can get sunflower to produce seed if you've got the right variety, basically anywhere in the world. You can grow these things. They're easy to grow. They're easy to harvest seeds from. The seeds are exponential. You plant 1 seed, you get a lot of seeds back, right? Seeds are beautiful that way. It's a very, very easy crop to begin with. One of the things that's nice about it is it's what I call a whole seed oil seed crop. We don't have to take the shell off of it. We don't have to deal with shelling or anything like that. We can run the seeds shell and all right through the press. So we can skip that whole step because that can get labor intensive with some things. Right, shells and all right through the press, super simple stuff, right? Here's some math if you're into that sort of thing. It takes about 10 pounds of seeds to produce a gallon of oil, sunflower seeds to produce a gallon of sunflower oil. So if you think about, that black oil sunflower seed that people use for bird feed, which by the way, black oil sunflower seeds has one of the highest oil contents of all seeds. That's why they use it for bird seed. It's a high fat content, large seed. It's actually exactly what you want for oil production. So if you know a guy that's selling organic bird feed, buy a 50-pound bag of it, and then you're ready to go. And that 50-pound bag of bird seed will produce 5 gallons of sunflower oil. That's an incredible amount of sunflower oil if you think about it. It's enough to last you a very long time. If you were growing your own, about an acre of sunflowers will produce around 200 gallons of oil. And on average, the oil will retail around $1.18 an ounce, and that varies. The prices of things, the prices of things have possibly changed since I got out of bed this morning. That's where we're at in the world, you know. But on average, we're going to say about $1.18 an ounce. So meaning an acre of flowers will produce around $30,000 worth of sunflower oil. That's a lot. You ever go to those places where they have the sunflower fields, but they grow at the farm for people to come take wedding pictures or whatever they do? What a side income that could be for these guys, harvesting those seeds and turning it into oil. Locally grown sunflower oil, you know, quite a bit of it. How about pumpkins? Pumpkins are fun. Now, pumpkins can be a little bit more labor intensive when it comes to, you got to grow the pumpkin, you have to have the space for the pumpkin, extracting the seeds from the pumpkin. That can be a whole thing for sure, you know. So there's some pros and cons to this sort of thing. Now, pumpkin seed oil began in around the mid 1800s in Austria. Is where they first, in Europe, it was where they first started pressing pumpkin seed oil. And then in Austria, in a pumpkin field, they'd found a mutation in the crop where there was pumpkins that were growing seeds that had no shells on them, hull-less pumpkin seeds, which were ideal for oil production. And it produced the most delectable, delightful oil ever. It was a delicacy, right? And it really is. If you've ever had pumpkin seed oil, it's some premium stuff. It's really, really nice. One of the trade-offs, though, is when you have a pumpkin that produces a shell with, or a seed with no shell, is by breeding that trait into these plants, they've kind of bred out some of the other traits that I enjoy about pumpkins, like flavor. So they're very bland pumpkins that are pretty much useless to try to eat. So finding a middle ground between those two things is important. One place that I find great success actually is butternut squash. All squash seeds have an oil content. All squash seeds can be pressed for oil. Some will produce more, some are yield higher than others, you know. But butternut squash is a high yielding seed. It's a delicious fruit. I prefer butternut squash. It's one of my favorite types of squash. It's long storing. It's got a nice dry flesh that I like to eat. I can run the seeds through, leaving the shell on, perfectly fine. You can still press those things and get some delicious oil. What we're looking at here in this picture is a pumpkin seed extraction machine. Now, this is some large scale operation, but I have a friend who grows pumpkins. Her and her mom have a pumpkin farm down in Chesaning, Michigan. And one year, her and some of her farmer friends pooled resources to get one of these machines so they can do the seed extraction stuff. And it's pretty sweet. But they also make small models that can be pushed by hand or by a small lawn tractor behind you, and you can load your pumpkins by hand into it, and it'll do the same work. But what we're looking at here is it's got that drum with those spikes on it. As it rolls over the field, it picks up those pumpkins with those spikes and brings them into the pulverizer, the big part of the machine, and it smashes those pumpkins down over screens and blasts them with water, right? So it separates out the seeds from the pulp. And the seeds are kept inside the machine, and then the pulp, as you can see, is blasted back out the end onto the field. And then, you know, deer come and eat it or whatever. And that certainly works. Now, this would have to be a cooperative operation to do, but one of those smaller pull-behind models would certainly work for what I would consider large-scale seed extraction on a household level, because doing it by hand can be a bit of a pain. But if you eat enough butternut squash and you just save your seeds as you go, it's a quick way to gather quite a bit of seed, and it doesn't take a lot of seed to produce a little bit of that delicate, delicious pumpkin seed oil. How about hemp? Look at this picture, huh? Woohoo! That looks like a good time. What a beautiful, beautiful thing hemp can be. You know, hemp is my favorite of all the oils. You know, really, it is, dig it. It is a perfect balance of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid. It has all of the essential amino acids. It's a complete plant protein. It's high in zinc, magnesium, potassium, most of the B vitamins. It is an absolute powerhouse to consume as well as to use on your body. It is absolutely incredible stuff. It is also a seed that we can run whole right through the machine. We don't have to take the shell off of it. The shell of a hemp seed is completely edible, right? So we can load them right in there, no problem at all. The reason that I like to talk about hemp is because we need more people growing hemp, period, right? For grain production, seeds specifically. Now, in our peak years of pressing oil, we are running about 2,000 pounds of hemp seed a year through our press, which is an incredible amount. We were buying it from Canadians and bringing it over from Canada. It was easier for me to deal with the logistics of bringing 2,000 pounds of hemp seed over the Canadian border than it was for me to find an American grower growing hemp seed at any sort of scale. The hemp agriculture is coming back, and that's fantastic to see for sure. But most people are growing hemp for CBD production, right? Hopefully they're using the stalks and making toilet paper or something. Hopefully, but for the most part, it's CBD production. And when you're growing your plants for CBD, you're not allowing them to go to seed. You're harvesting the flowering tops well before it gets to seed production. So getting a quantity of American grown hemp grain, hemp seed for oil pressing is very difficult. It's almost doesn't exist. So I'm hoping to encourage an industrious person somewhere to start doing that. If you decide to grow a field of hemp for seed production, you let me know and I will buy 2,000 pounds of seed from you. Guaranteed first year, I will do it. I'm going to tell everybody that. Eventually somebody's going to do it. It's going to be fantastic for everybody because we need more of that. Hemp's an amazing plant. Some side facts that you may not know. The first American flag, Betsy Ross, right? First American flag was made with hemp fiber, right? In colonial America, it was mandated that all farmers had to have a plot of hemp because of how useful it was. The Constitution of the United States of America was written on paper made from hemp. Wild, right? Interesting. So grow some, please. Here's a picture of the press at the end of the operation. Now, really what we're looking at here in this photo, what I'm trying to show you is the seed cake. You can see in the bowl there that the remains, that's the remains from the extraction process. What I like to show this for is because it's useful stuff. It's a zero waste operation pressing your own oil. This crushed hemp seed that comes out of that machine is completely edible. It's absolutely delicious. You could eat it as is. I like to throw it in the food processor, mill it into a fine powder. I can add it to my baked goods. I put it in pancakes, whatever. If you're doing something like sunflower seeds where you're leaving the shell on and it's something you don't necessarily want to consume, that's fine. There's lots of other uses for it. If you have chickens, feed it to your chickens. They will love you forever. Pigs, that sort of thing. At the very least, put it in your compost and it will produce the richest, darkest soil you've ever seen. It's absolutely amazing, right? So no waste at all. It's a zero waste operation from seed to bottle for sure. All right, let's talk about some herbs. All right, we got enough time. We're going to talk about herbs specifically from the perspective of their applications in oil, right? Producing oil-based products, because that's kind of the topic of the day. So we're going to start with dandelion, the dente de leon, tooth of the lion, right, from the French, because of the leaf here. But really what we're going to talk about the most, of course, the leaf is edible. The entire plant's edible. From the top of the flower to the bottom of the root, the entire dandelion plant is completely edible. You can eat the leaves, obviously, in salads and stir fries and that sort of thing. The flowers, put them on salads. You can put them in wine. I guess people make dandelion wine. We use the roots in tincture form quite often for its liver health and that sort of thing. But what I'm going to talk about right now is dandelion flowers infused in oil, right? What we do when we infuse our herbs in oil is we're extracting the fat-soluble chemicals. In essence, the oil becomes a solvent, right? In herbalism, it's called a menstruum, right? It becomes the vehicle, so to speak, that harnesses the chemicals of the plant material, right? So we're going to extract the fat-soluble chemicals from the plants into our oil. So when we make an dandelion-infused oil, we can then use that oil for every medicinal aspect that we would use dandelions for. It is fantastic on dry skin, rashes, burns, abrasions. It's a minor analgesic, so it's good for pain relief. So we're going to make topical applications. We can make salves, balms, or lotions from dandelion flowers. Absolutely incredible for dry skin. I like to put it in lip balm. Really nice. How about stinging nettles? Urtica dioica. Now, if we can see this plant up close, and you can kind of see it if you look really close and towards the center on that stem, that bit of stem you can see those little hairs on there. If we could look at those hairs through a microscope, we would see that each one of them has a little sphere of a little ball on the end of them. A formic acid is what it is. Histamines and formic acid. It's very similar to a red ant bite. So if you've ever brushed up against stinging nettles, you're familiar with this. It gets that burning, irritated, nobody likes it type of thing. Unless you touch it enough, like, you come to love it after a while. I just was rolling around in a little bit. I found out here, taking pictures of it, and like that, it's a nice sensation. It really helps wake you up. Roman soldiers used to beat each other with nettles plants in preparation for war, to get them all pumped up to go to war, And if you've ever been in the nettles, the rage, you're familiar with that feeling. It opens up the capillaries and it increases blood flow, right? So we can use oil extraction of our nettles. It's going to be great for circulatory issues. It's going to be great for, it's anti-inflammatory. So we're going to use it for arthritis, joint pain, sore muscles, that sort of thing. It is absolutely fantastic for pain relief. You can just use the oil itself and massage it into your hands, or wherever you're feeling, the arthritis or pain at. It's really going to help a lot. It's good stuff. It's just coming up where I'm at right now. It's just breaking out of the ground, the little babies. And from any point where it breaks free from the ground, right up until it flowers, you can harvest this plant. It's essentially cut and come again. You cut this thing, it'll keep coming back year after year forever. Even if you don't want to use it topically, eat it all. Once you dry it or cook it, it dissipates that formic acid and makes it completely safe to consume. It is one of the most nutritious plants. It's better for you than spinach. All the B vitamins, minerals, iron. It's particularly high in iron. So it's great for folks that suffer from anemia, that sort of thing. Saute it, put it in soups, put it in your eggs, put it on anything and everything that you would use, kale or spinach or other greens for. Substitute for some nettles and you'll be really, really happy that you did. Jewelweed. Look at this. This is a great shot right here. It's an impatient, a wild impatient. What we're really trying to harness from this plant is the clear sap that you'll find in the stem. If you break the stem of the plant open, it's like a very hollow tube. It's got this clear sap that'll drip right out of it. That's really where most of the medicine is at that we want. Jewelweed is fantastic for poison ivy. Number one, the best remedy for poison ivy. You'll often find jewelweed near where poison ivy is at. So that works out really well. It's almost like Mother Nature's got this plan, so that works out really, really nice. You could certainly make an oil extraction out of it. You can make a balm or a lotion to apply if you get into poison ivy. I have a friend who will extract jewelweed in oil and then use that oil in a soap recipe and make soap. Which is great for poison ivy. I've used it. It works really, really well. But the best way to use it really is to harvest up the plant fresh, put it in the food processor with a little bit of water, blend it up real nice, and make ice cubes out of it. And then you get into that poison ivy, and you can just put these ice cubes on. Just an ice cube itself is soothing for poison ivy, but with the jewelweed medicine in there, it's really going to help with the pain and the redness and the itching and all that sort of thing. It's really going to help a lot. Indigenous populations, it was quite popular and may still be with some folks to apply jewelweed sap as a preventative before going out in the woods to avoid getting poison ivy. I have not tried that personally. Well, I don't see why it wouldn't work. 9 times out of 10, when we can look to indigenous knowledge and the stories about plants that they've shared, science is just catching up to saying, oh, they were right. Oh, they were right. Almost every time. Oh, looks like they were right. So I'm sure in this one, they were right too. So give it a try sometime and test it out. How about plantain? Oh man, how much time can we spend on plantain? All day long. That's for sure. This is Plantigo major right here. This is the broadleaf plantain. You'll also see lanceolata, which is the narrow leaf variety. Perfectly interchangeable. They're about the same. You can definitely use either or in any application. It's an edible plant, of course. The youngest, most tender leaves in the center of the rosette. They're high in vitamin C. It's good to eat. But plantain has a compound in the leaf called allantoin, and allantoin is a compound. It convinces cells to reproduce faster than they already are, right? So it's great topically for like cuts and scratches and that sort of thing. It's going to really help heal that wound. It's an antibacterial as well, so it'll help cleanse the wound as it's helping to heal the wound, which is really nice. A lot of us are familiar with plantain's anti-inflammatory action. You can take a plantain leaf and chew it up and apply it to a bug bite or a bee sting, and it will stop itching and swelling almost on contact. It's amazing. You can use it fresh just like that, chew it right up and put it on there. It'll work out great. If you want to, you can infuse it in oil and make it into a salve and then use that topically as well. It's also quite effective. Another fun thing to know about plantain, if you ever go to the health food store, you'll see they sell this stuff called psyllium husk. It's very popular. It's high in fiber. People use it for a lot of different things, I suppose. It's just plantain seeds, right? But you sell a lot more of it if you call it psyllium husk, I suppose, because it's really popular at the health food store, and it's growing in everybody's backyards. It's growing in cracks in the sidewalks. This thing, it's everywhere you could ever want to go. Plantain. It's actually one of the folk names for the plant is the white man's footstep. It's not native to the Americas. It was brought here by colonial settlers. And the indigenous people here discovered that it seemed that everywhere a white man went, this plant was soon to follow, right? As if it was his footstep. So that's kind of how it got that name. But it's an interesting thing to think about because these colonial settlers that came over here on these boats had very limited space and very limited resources for the things they were going to choose to bring with them. And this was a plant that they intentionally brought with them because of how beneficial it was, right? Not only as a food source, but also as a healing medicinal. So we can learn a lot about the importance of roles that these plants played just by listening to these old folklores, these old stories. They're just full of wisdom. Witch hazel, Hamamelis virginiana. That's the one that grows here by us. I love it because it blossoms in the fall, right? It's beautiful little, what do they look like? Little fireworks, you know? They're just beautiful little things. Now, you're probably familiar with witch hazel. They sell it at the pharmacies and that sort of thing. It's very inexpensive, clear product that is typically around 16% isopropyl alcohol, which is really not something you want to put on your body, isopropyl alcohol. But we can make a witch hazel just like what they sell at the grocery store, but far, far better, I suppose. We're going to make it from the bark of the plants. Most often we could just boil it in water to get an extraction, but you can also use oil to make a fat extraction out of it. And it would most simple just as work just as well. It's astringent, it's anti-inflammatory. You can use it as a face cleanser. It's good for acne. It's good for scratches, cuts and bruises. It's good for varicose veins. It's just saggy, bags in your eyes. It's good for so many wonderful things. And we can make it at home and avoid the use of isopropyl alcohol, which I think would just be good for all of us anyways. And plus, it's just a gorgeous plant. If you're not familiar with it, try to keep an eye out for it this year. And once you discover it and you see it, you'll see it all sorts of places. It's really abundant. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. This is a fantastic plant. This is another one of those plants that you can just utilize by chewing up, right? So it's an antiseptic and it's a styptic. And a styptic, what that means is that it stops bleeding, right? You could take a yarrow leaf, chew it up, and put it on a cut, and it will stop bleeding on contact, like nature's Band-Aid. It's incredible stuff. You can dry the leaf and powder it and keep it like in a first aid kit. Works really well. Being an antiseptic, again, it's going to clean that wound while it stops the bleeding and helps it heal. But again, all those chemicals are also fat soluble, so we can extract them in our oils to make them into topical salves that we can throw in our first aid kit as well. And we could use it on cuts and scratches and bruises and abrasions and all those things, and it's going to work really, really well for us. You'll see yarrows often sold at landscape, greenhouses where you can buy plants and things, and it comes in a variety of different colors, pinks and oranges and whatever. And that's beautiful. But if you're looking for it medicinally, you want the white. The white one's the best one. Just like with the pumpkin seeds, breeding that hullless trait, lost flavor in the pumpkins. When we breed yarrow flowers to be more beautiful, we lose some of their medicinal compounds. So medicinally, the most potent yarrow is the white wild version. Wintergreen, yeah. Gaultheria procumbens is the wintergreen plant. It grows with these underground runners. So you'll find you can pull a wintergreen plant right up and it'll just pull up like a bunch of them all around it. They're all connected to each other. So it's fat soluble. The compound that we're going to extract here is called methyl salicylate, which is very similar to the compound that's used to make aspirin, right? So it's great for pain relief. You can brew wintergreen leaves into a tea, which would be great for a headache, or you can go fat soluble and make it into a salve or a lotion and use it topically. For sore muscles in particular, it works really, really well. Now you'll see if you've ever worked with wintergreen, it's got a kind of a thick, glossy leaf. So to expedite extraction, I always recommend we want to cut these leaves open, tear them apart, get a little more surface area. You're going to get a better extraction from your plants if you do that. Chickweed, Stellaria media. I just found a bunch of chickweed growing outside of a library the other day when I was there, which is now probably covered in snow. But it was beautiful to see when I saw it. This is a super close up of a very small plant. But chickweed is fantastic, just like we're going to use dandelion for dry, itchy, red skin conditions. We're going to want to make lotions or salves, balms out of it for that sort of application. Again, just like with the dandelion, excellent for lip balm, wonderful for dry, chapped cracked lips and that sort of thing for sure. St. John's wort. There it is. Hypericum perforatum. Beautiful. It's hypericin is the chemical specifically that we're going to extract from the St. John's wort flower. Now, it gets its name St. John's wort because it blooms around St. John's Day, which is a holiday in the United Kingdom, which is very close, though, to the summer solstice. That's typically when we'll find it blooming around here. And when you harvest the flowers, it'll even stain your fingers red from that hypericin. It's very fat soluble. It'll turn the oil a beautiful red color. It's fantastic. This is great for pain relief. I like to use it for sunburn. It's one of the greatest oils that you can use for helping with the pain and irritation caused by sunburn for sure, but it's also a nervine. So it's great for nerve pain, fibromyalgia in particular. You can make a salve out of it, apply it to the area where you feel the pain, and you'll feel relief quite quickly, actually. It's a pretty potent plant for sure. It's most well known for its uses as a mood enhancer, like an antidepressant type of thing that was really hot in the 90s. But consuming St. John's wort sometimes counteracts negatively with antidepressant medication, right? If you're on depression medication, you pretty much want to steer clear of consuming St. John's wort, but topical application of St. John's wort is perfectly safe. So all those oils can become infused oils, right? All those herbs can become infused oils, I think is what I meant to say, right? By simply, I'll give you the quickest rundown on how we're going to do it. We're going to take a mason jar. See this water bottle? We're going to pretend this is my mason jar. You're going to take your dried herbs. That's the key, not fresh herbs. They got to be dried. Oil and water don't mix. And the water content of your herbs, if you infuse them in oil, will harbor bacteria and it will cause your product to mold. So you're going to want dry herbs. You're going to fill your mason jar up 3/4 to 100% full with dried herbs, and then you're going to top it off with oil. You're going to take some sort of tool. I use a chopstick, some sort of item to stir it up a little bit. Again, you just want to get the air out of it. You see a lot of air bubbles get trapped in there, and air is going to harbor bacteria. Air is going to cause your product to mold, right? So get all the air out of there. And then you're going to cap it off. You're going to label it with the name of the herbs that you put in there, the type of the oil that you used, and the date. Now, which date? This is up to you. You can either use today's date, the day that you're making the oil, or the date when the product will be ready. And it will be ready in 6 to 8 weeks. So you can use either date, today's date or the date 6 to 8 weeks from now. But whatever you choose, you have to always do that from now on. You can't switch back and forth because then you're going to get confused, right? So pick one, label it. You're going to put it in a cool, dark place. I put it in with like my canned food where we keep our, our canned tomatoes and such. Cool, dark place, 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if 8 weeks comes up and you don't have a chance to get back to the product, it's totally okay. As long as the herbs are submerged under the oil and they don't have access to air, they'll be perfectly fine. They'll just sit and wait for you. But it will not get any stronger. It won't get any more potent. 8 weeks is maximum extraction. It'll sit and wait for you, but it's not going to get any stronger. Once we have completed our 6 to 8 weeks of time, our herb infused oil is ready. We're going to want to strain out the herbs, right? And I might have pictures that show that in a second here. We're going to strain out the herbs, and then we'll have it. And you'll be able to see the color of the oil has changed, the aroma of the oil, all signals that we've gotten a great extraction. We can then use our oils direct as is, like with St. John's wort for sunburns. If I got a sunburn, it's like my whole back. So having just the straight oil is really nice to use. But sometimes that can get messy, or I want to make it portable. So we're going to make a salve or a balm or a lotion. And really, technically, the biggest difference between these things is the ratio of oil to wax. More wax, stiffer product, salve. Less wax, softer product, lotion, right? Technically, body butter is what they call it now. A technical lotion will have water introduced into it, which harbors bacteria, so then we need preservatives. It gets a little technical. If you want to make lotions, you could read my book, The Artisan Herbalist, but for now, we're going to talk about body butters, which is just the ratio of wax to oil. Let's get into it. So we're going to take our herb-infused oil. We're going to strain out all of the oil to get all the plant material out of it, as you can see on the right here. I'm using a big funnel with a fine mesh screen at the bottom. That works great. You can use a cheesecloth or whatever you've got, just whatever. We want to strain out all that plant material. Then we're going to squeeze it. I'm using a potato masher in this picture. I mean, this is something you've got right at your house. You just squeeze it. You want to get every drop of oil out of those herbs, right? If you're using a cheesecloth, you just wring that thing out by hand or whatever. Just squeeze all the goodness out. Then the leftover plants, you can just throw them in your compost, give them to your animals, whatever you want to do with them. You can just throw them out your back door and nature will take it. Animals will come and scatter them around. So just get rid of it. Don't throw it in the trash. That's silly, but anything else is a good option. Then we're going to want to take our herb infused oil and blend it with beeswax. Now, this is when it gets particular. The ratio of beeswax to oil, right? I'm going to give you the starting point ratio right now. You're going to write this down and you're going to start with this, but then I want you to feel free to adjust it. Make tweaks on it to make it personal. But to get you started to make a salve, you are going to want 1¼ ounces of beeswax by weight, 1.25 ounces of beeswax by weight, weigh it. For every 16 ounces volume, liquid ounces of oil, 16 ounces of oil by volume, 1¼ ounces of beeswax by weight. And you can scale that in any way. If you've only got 4 ounces of oil, then take 1.25, divide it by 4, and that's how much beeswax you're gonna need, right? So you can scale this in any direction that you want. You're gonna get yourself a double boiler. As you can see here on the left, I do not even have a double boiler. I've got a stainless steel cooking pot with a stainless steel bowl on top of it, and it works fine. And I'll make about 5,000 salves every couple of months, and I've never used a double boiler. So again, don't buy anything. Make sure you got enough water in your pot that you're not going to cook it dry, because that would be dangerous. But you put the water in the pot, you put the stainless steel bowl on top, you add your measured out oil and beeswax, let it go. As the water boils, the oil will get warm, the beeswax will melt. You can see in the picture at the right in the top, if you look at the oil, that cloudy yellow part in the center, that's all the melted beeswax. That's what it'll look like. And then you just, when you're done, give it a stir. Make sure it's nicely blended up. Stir it together. Now, some people like to use essential oils. I don't use a lot of essential oils myself, but if you want to, that's okay. But the place that you add them in to the process is very important. You want to add them as soon as you take the oil off the heat. If you put the essential oils in while it's still on the heat, they're going to evaporate almost immediately. They're very volatile oils. If you wait until you've already poured your salve into a container and then put the essential oils on top, they'll just always be on the top, right? They won't be very well blended. So once your beeswax is melted, turn off your heat, add your essential oils, give it a good stir, and then pour it into containers. You can pour it in any kind of container you want. Here we're using a little 1 ounce tins. That seems to be the size our customers like, so we do a lot of those. They're very inexpensive. You can get them at food co-ops or online. But you can use whatever you got at home, for sure. Don't use soft plastic, right? You're pouring hot oil into it, so that's dangerous. But aside from that, use whatever you want. Baby food jars are fantastic. All those 4-ounce jelly jars are pretty groovy. Try not to use like a spaghetti sauce jar, because it's very narrow and tall, and you won't be able to get your hand in it. So something wider and shorter would be good. But whatever you have, pour it in there. As it cools, the beeswax will solidify again, forming your product. Very, very simple stuff. Now, some folks will just make one big 4-ounce thing and call it a day, and that's totally cool. But this thing, beeswax is a preservative, so these things will easily last a year or more. But what's going to cause them to go bad is as soon as you stick your finger in it. As soon as you stick your finger in it, you're introducing bacteria from your hands. So sometimes I recommend to folks to make multiple small salves, and that way you can have some closed up and put away, and just have one small sample that you're dipping in, until you're done with it. Seems to be a nice way to keep them clean. Or you can use a little wooden spoon or something, I suppose. Whatever's going to work for you, though. That's the beauty of herbalism, is just do what's going to be best for you. Now, we did talk about the multitude of oils that you can use, and I think that that's important. And this is going to be the last thing I'm going to say. This is a picture from our farmer's market table one year. These are a bunch of the oils that we had to offer that day. We can spend our whole lives studying plants and their uses, and we pick particular plants for our formulas because of the specific chemical compounds it offers, right? Each herb offers its own benefits. And then we just take these plants and just throw them in olive oil or grapeseed oil or whatever, and we could, that's fine, but we could make better herbal products if we consider the oil to be an ingredient. Each of these oils come from a plant that has very specific chemical compounds of its own, that offers its own benefits, right? So we can make better formulas if we consider the benefits of the oils themselves. Example, we make a healing salve. It's for cuts and scratches and that sort of thing. It's got yarrow and comfrey in it. And I use sunflower oil for those herbs, right? Sunflower oil has a great viscosity. It's easily absorbed into the skin, and it's high in vitamin E, which is an essential skin nutrient, right? I actually make the product better by using an oil that actually heals the skin. Our pain relieving salve, believe it or not, what are we using? Hemp seed oil, right? Because hemp seed oil offers pain relieving benefits all on its own. So we make our formulas better when we consider the oils as part of the team, not just a vehicle. And you could do that when you press your own right at home, right? If you want to do that, here's where you get the stuff. All of my books are available through my website, Amazon Bookshop. Your local library probably has them. Get them, read them, check them out. The one on the far left, The Complete Guide to Seed and Nut Oils, will tell you everything you need to know to grow and forage and press well over 40 different oilseed crops. And then the Artisan Herbalist will teach you all about 38 herbs you can grow or forage, and then make them into teas, tinctures, and oils, and all sorts of wonderful stuff. Here's the way to stay in contact with me if you would like to, our Facebook and our Instagram, as well as our YouTube channel. But like I said, you can get all of my books also, as well as our seeds and herbal products and all sorts of things right at smallhousefarm.com. Visit smallhousefarm.com, and I'm going to tell you, write this down too. If you go to the website and if you decide to buy something, use the coupon code GARDEN. Garden, right? We're all dreaming about gardens, right? Right now, garden. Put that, it'll give you 20% off everything that you buy. So that'll cover your shipping. It'll be just like we were in person together, except you'll have access to all the things off our website, not just the stuff that I would have brought today. So that'd be pretty cool. Garden. And that's all the time I got, folks. So if you got any questions, drop them in the chat. I'll try to answer some of them, and we'll do what I can with that. Thanks again for having me, everybody. Pam, thank you so much. Stay warm and enjoy this beautiful spring, folks.
Okay. I think we do have someone asked what kind of questions or what kind of oils you use, but I think you just covered that. Which different oils for different products. Someone wants to know, do you sell products online or only at farmers markets?
We sell most of our products online. We do set up at some occasional farmers markets, typically right now, maybe only just in Midland once a month. And we do bring some stuff to the farmers market that's very seasonal or that we just harvested from the garden, or very small batch items that I just don't have enough of to list on the website. So sometimes you'll find some unique things at our farmers market table, but we try to keep the website as up to date as possible throughout the season with the greatest selection of stuff. So that's where you're going to find quite a bit of cool things. Like I said, seeds, herbal products. We got some artwork on there, the books, of course, all sorts of different stuff.
Okay. Someone asked, what's the best oils to use that for people who are sensitive to scents, and things like shea butter?
That's a great question. So, and typically if you were to buy refined oils at the grocery store, after I just told you not to, you'd find that they have very little scent. So that'd be a way to go. But out of the oils, that off the top of my head, I would say something like sesame oil. And when you think of sesame oil, often you'll think of that black, the dark colored sesame oil that we use on typically Asian food, but that's toasted. When those seeds are toasted before they're pressed, what gives it that rich, dark color. If you take raw blonde sesame seeds and press them, it's a very light colored oil with very little scent at all. So sesame might be a great option for somebody looking to avoid that sort of thing.
Okay.
Or to buy beeswax. Oh yeah. So hook up with your local bee man. If you got an apiary near you, a guy at your farmer's market selling honey, go right to him and ask him about beeswax, because those guys are typically up to their elbows in beeswax, looking for something to do with it. Beeswax extraction is part of honey harvesting, and they generally have way more than they know what to do with. So hook up with your local honey guy and ask them, guy or gal, your local honey person, and ask them about it, and they'd probably be more than happy to sell you some. If you don't happen to have a honey person in your neighborhood, your local food co-op will probably sell it. Frontier Herb Co-op online, Mountain Rose Herbs, and some of those places you can buy where they take the beeswax and it's already in like pellets, very small pellets, very easy to work with, very easy to measure. When you buy from your local honey person, you're just going to get a big block. He pours it into Tupperware containers, and that's how I get it. So they're big blocks. But the trick there, put them in the freezer till they're nice and hard. It makes them more frigid, and then you can bust them with a hammer, and they'll bust into smaller pieces.
How do you tell if your oil has gone rancid?
So the oil in the salve is far less likely to go rancid because the beeswax is going to act as a preservative. Oil before it becomes a salve, you can tell it goes rancid because of the smell. You'll definitely be able to get a smell to it. Sometimes it'll get a little fishy. Sometimes it'll almost kind of smell metallic. It'll definitely have an off smell to it. But it's good to know that even rancid oil, although it doesn't taste necessarily great, won't hurt you. You can definitely consume rancid oil and it won't make you sick. It just won't taste the best. But your salve itself, you'll tell that it's gone bad. Typically, again, from once you've introduced bacteria into it, it'll get small. I don't want to say black mold because it's not like black mold that we're afraid of, but it's a mold and it's blackish colored, and this little specks of it you'll see start to grow in the salve. But that won't happen until after you introduce it yourself.
Yeah. I had a question about refrigerating your cold pressed oils. Do you recommend that?
In many circumstances, I do. Some oils need to be refrigerated to increase their shelf life. Right, the first ones come to mind to me are flax oil, hemp seed oil, those sorts of things should be refrigerated most certainly. But other oils can sit at room temperature even if they're cold pressed. Things like pumpkin seed oil, sunflower oil, those sorts of things, they'll be fine sitting out at room temperature. So it's going to vary from oil to oil. If you do purchase my book and you read it, I get really in depth on storage and the temperatures, the best temperatures for each storage situation that you could consider, whether it's out at room temperature, sitting in the sun, in the refrigerator. But you can refrigerate all oils. If you're unsure of it and you don't want to buy the book, if you're whenever in doubt, stick it in the fridge. It's not going to hurt it, and it'll definitely increase the shelf life.
Speaking of the book, we just got our copy. I guess this will be backwards again, but for the library, it's not even on the shelf yet. So one thing I like to do is, and I often do, is I check something up for the library and then I go, well, I just need to own this. So I go buy it. And that'll probably be what happened if you're really interested in, in this type of herbalism or nut oils and seed oils and things like that. But definitely, it'll probably get on the shelf tomorrow, I would expect. It just arrived. I was so happy it came before this program. But yeah, it's another great book from Ben, and we really appreciate you coming tonight. And I'm going to send everybody an email who signed up. We always get, since we can't go ahead and not a mix up, but we decided it was safer for Ben to stay put up by Midland because the weather that we got earlier today had just hit them about the time he needed to leave. So I will send everyone an email. I will put in all of Ben's contact information that he showed on that last slide. I'll put in some links to beeswax sources that he mentioned, like Frontier and Mountain Rose Herbs. And maybe if I can round up a couple of names of local apiarists that keep bees, possibly find out if they sell it. But it really is not hard to find online. So anyway, I think that's about it. I don't see any last minute questions. So look for the email. I'll also include a link to the recording of this so you can watch it over again. If there's something you missed, or if you came in late, you'll be able to catch up. So everybody, thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. And
thank you so much, everybody. It was a pleasure. You guys have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye.